At least 2 British firms have started doing business in Davao since the British Trade Mission visited the city last March. But how are these companies coping nearly 60 days since President Duterte imposed martial rule in Mindanao? I'm joined now by Chris Nelson, the chairman of the British Chamber of Commerce Philippines, in our Rockwell studio in Makati. Good to have you back with us, Chris. Thank you for joining us.
Very nice to be back and nice to see you again, Kathy.
Yes,
good morning, everyone.
Yeah, I'm looking at the 2 firms here. Seaguard, offering monitoring and protection services for marine assets, and YLF Contracts, an engineering consultancy firm. When did they start doing business in Davao City?
Okay, so for the Safeguard, actually, they were in negotiations prior to our trade mission, but they cemented that, so they've actually started work. Our trade mission was the end of March of this year. YLF, the engineering company, came on the trade mission and immediately afterwards decided to open up an office. So they've been doing business there, both of them, since March of this year.
So these companies did business during the martial rule period imposed in Mindanao, still within that 60-day period.
So can you repeat the question, please?
Yes, they did business. They were in business already when the martial rule was imposed in Mindanao.
Correct. And look, obviously, first of all, in terms of the martial law, we obviously have a great deal of sympathy and concern for the people in Manawi. But saying that also, of course, they are starting business, those 2 companies. And I will be going down to Davao tomorrow to also attend and speak at the Davao Investment Conference, which is taking place on the 20th and 21st of July.
Yeah, but the president himself has asked lawmakers for an extension of martial rule in Mindanao. First, he wanted 60 more days. Next, he's asked until the end of this year. Do the British still see martial law as a short-term issue with this requested extension from the president himself?
Well, I'd say this, and I've said it on your program before, in terms of companies coming to do business, they'll always be guided in terms of security by the authorities. But actually, of course, they have other concerns about doing business, such as the ease of doing business, what are their business opportunities. So I think we'll always guide them. I think, of course, they see this, as you said, as a short term, but primarily there are other considerations in terms of establishing the business. Of course, we'd all like to see the situation resolved, and again, our sympathy from the Chamber goes out to everybody involved in the conflict. Now,
what happens to the 7 other companies that have shown a serious interest in Mindanao? I believe there are 7 others engaged in body cosmetics, water waste treatment, water technology, software, auto vehicle, lubricants. I mean, from the April to May period to invest. What is the status of those plans now, given the potential extension of martial rule in Mindanao?
I think actually they're still continuing, actually. Don't forget, of course, they're doing business in, they were looking from that trade mission in Davao, but they'll be looking at doing business overall in the Philippines. And I think also business as a whole is also developed over time. It's one of the reasons why we're going back to Davao to support the Davao Chamber. They were very supportive to us, and we strongly believe that business can be established, but it's established over time and building up relations. So we're still confident those 7 companies will actually achieve business.
So what's the initial read on the attendance in Davao City at the end of this week to attend the Davao Investment Conference?
Well, look, we're very optimistic. I mean, from my understanding, I think they're going to get close to 300 attendees. I'm going there to make a short speech. I'm also being attended by the president of PCCI, George Barcelona, who's also a key member of our trade mission. And I think it's going to be a good opportunity to interact and also look at some of the economic plans. And I'd just like to relate it to the fact that we're also having a major event here on the 10th of August in Manila on Dutertenomics. And I think this goes in line with the fact the Chamber supports strongly the 10-point plan and the fact that we continue to drive, along with our embassy, increased trade and investment between the Philippines and the UK.
But this is going to be the first time the conference is going to be held with Mindanao under martial rule. Is there any reason to be cautious heading to Davao City under the circumstances?
Look, I think you've always got to be guided and cautious. Our embassy has advised that travel to Davao is business essential, which I consider in this case. We'll always be guided by our authorities, and I'm sure all the necessary measures have been put in place. But at the same time, I do think there are business opportunities. I also think this is a time to show our support, because we got tremendous support from Davao Chamber and all the other authorities when we did our trade mission. And as I wanted to say to you again, Kathy, I think this is a way of us following up. The British Chamber and the British Embassy are trying to develop business on a long-term basis, and will continue to do so prudently and, of course, guided by the required authorities on our safety.
Yeah, now that we speak about safety and security, there has been an ambush earlier. We reported it. The PSG had been ambushed in one of the provinces there. Does that not send a sense of concern to the British firms wanting to do business in Mindanao?
Look, I think always they'll be guided, as I say, by what the embassy says. As I said to you, our current status on Davao is business essential. But I think overall, in terms of business, it's not obviously safety is a key concern, but there are other key issues as well. Obviously, as I said before, about doing business, what are the business opportunities? That's why, as a chamber, we've always been looking at those opportunities, and that's why, again, as I stress, we're hosting that event very much coming up, focusing on the economic plan and the Duterte-nomics, which will take place here on the 10th of August. In conjunction with PCCO and also Makati Business Club.
Could you give us some visibility as to when the travel advisory would be lifted in Business Essential?
Well, that's something that we have to obviously have discussions with the British Embassy. They would obviously look at that and take discussions with the various authorities. We would obviously publish that to our members. And again, we're also in discussion with people who do business there. I've also been in touch with obviously the Davao Chamber. I've been in discussion with Amflacor, who is a company that also supported us extensively. So, you know, I obviously take my safety and that of my staff seriously, and we're going to Davao. But again, I think this is a time we have to look also at building long-term relationships, which the Chamber and the Embassy is keenly focused on.
All right, well, do keep us up to speed when you head to Davao City. All the best. Thank you so much for joining us. Chris Nelson.
Thank you again, Kathy.
Chamber of Commerce.
Have a good day.
You too, sir.